today we'll get to here at the end, but first I want to walk you through a little bit of my journey and how I got here. So when I travel, I prefer to stay in a small location where locals stay, and the best type of food I've ever eaten is a tiny hole-in-the-wall noodle soup place where the guy doesn't wash his hands between the time he goes from here to there, and it may not be the cleanest food, but it's got the most authentic, best taste that you'll ever get. And he lives upstairs in the little 4-foot wide plywood bed that's on the top of the cell that he works from. And that's where I'd eat every day when I went home from work in China. So I lived in China for 5 years, and that's kind of where my love for experiential travel and actually knowing people comes from. Because I worked with guys who were from the Nongcun, which means countryside. They would come in and they would work, and their kids would live back with their grandparents. And they were the best friends I've ever had. And they had no education whatsoever, and they lived in tiny little places. So what's happening right now in tourism? Well, from my perspective, this is my vantage point, so it's biased. But you've got a lot of these people that have white hair. It's called baby boomers. And they're traveling, and that's what a large portion of Alaska's tourism is made up of. And when baby boomers go the way that all people will eventually go, which is passing on from here, what comes after them? So these are two people from China, and one of them speaks Chinese, and one of them speaks a little bit of English. And they flew from China to the US. They bought their tickets 6 days before they left, all on a phone. Then they came here and they did their entire itinerary from a phone, and only one of them spoke a little bit of English. And they stayed at non-major hotels, and they did the entire trip on their own. So they would be fully independent travelers without a travel agent and only a tiny bit of English. And what did they want to do? They wanted to do local experiences as much as they possibly could. And they were willing to do things out of like normal order. They came at a wrong time of year to do the wrong sort of thing, but it's when they could afford to come. So when I travel, I didn't bring my phone up here, but I have an iPhone, right? And when I travel in China, I never carry my wallet. I pay for everything from my phone. It's a thing called WeChat Pay or Alipay, and I pay for taxis, hotel rooms, food, everything from my phone. I don't even ever pull out a piece of plastic. And that's true for India, China, and they're the two most populous nations in the world. And how do they make decisions about travel? It's from their phone. More than 58% of the purchase decisions for Mandarin-speaking Chinese and Indians comes from mobile or peer-to-peer. And when they're looking at peer-to-peer, the crazy thing is you can actually see live availability of some tour operators in Alaska while you're sitting on a bus in China because of programs like Viator, which is the owner of TripAdvisor, which then has Boken, which allows an operator in Talkeetna to have their live availability on Boken, which then goes to Viator, which then goes to TripAdvisor. So, social media. How do people figure out where they're going? Chinese and Indians, they mostly make decisions based off of peer review, not based off of travel media or paid official communication. Why is that? They have a history of saying, well, the government's going to tell me what they want me to hear, and I want to find out for myself. Where do Americans go? TripAdvisor, Yelp, other peer-to-peer locations. A lot of times people are going someplace that they can't do elsewhere and escaping cities and finding a safe location. What's happening in the state of Alaska, at least this is northern Alaska, this isn't Anchorage, but this is Fairbanks location. If you look, this is occupancy percentages, and it's left to right, so blue is oldest and white is newest. And the winter months on all of this, off-season months, I should say, so everything from September through April is growing. What did we do? So we said we want experiential travel that is able to be connected all the way through the supply chain. And so we've gone ahead and we've built these things called igloos or domes where you can lay in bed and watch the aurora. And our supply chain is all the way through to end consumers, both in India, China, and the US, and it's all mobile-based. And we've chosen to do a multi-activity, multi-price point, meaning that we've got stuff that's over $1,000 a day, and then we've got stuff that's all the way down at about $300 a day, which is high for Fairbanks. And then because we're choosing to do a non-normal season for Alaska, we're doing the winter season, which really is actually fall, winter, and spring. We've got an 8-month operating season that's got over 90 days of peak season, what we consider peak season. And we're not original, we're copycats. I looked at Kaukslouten in Finland and said, holy smokes, why can't we do something like that? And it's not original in the sense that it's experiential lodging. It's a different style than what Karen and Carl are doing, but their lodging is experiential lodging, inviting people into a world they don't get to normally be in. This is another form of experiential lodging where we invite them in and we partner with local people on our road for all of the activities. So my question for everybody is, so what does that mean for me? Product is not product. Product is experience. I can go any place and fly on an airplane. I can't go any place and fly on a otter or a beaver and understand that the guy, when he's cranking on this thing over here, it's the flaps, or when he's rotating this thing over here, it's the trim tab in the back, right? And if the pilot enters me into that, I'm learning and experiencing a different style of life. Technology, whether we like it or not, anyone who's about the age of 35 or 40 and below spends too many hours a day on their phone, and they use it like their right arm. Are we going to adopt it as operators and professionals in the industry? Strategic partnerships to capture more of the spend. How do you get yourself cooperating with others to be able to pull in more of the overall spend of a guest? Just as we've looked at a longer season, I would encourage people to look and say, hey, is there a way that the assets or what I'm currently doing can expand into maybe, let's say, farther into spring, so I could open a little bit earlier? Or how would I adjust my product in the fall so it could go a little bit later? Because there is demand for travel year-round to a destination like Alaska.